Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Just Click podcast. I'm your host, Jordan, and I'm here with my co host, Justin. And today we have a special guest, Nithya. Nithya, could you quickly introduce yourself? Maybe tell us a bit about what you studied or maybe what you do here in this company?
Okay, so like you said, my name is Nitya. So I'm like the project coordinator here in iClick. So I'm currently pursuing my degree in digital media. Yeah, so that's like just a quick introduction.
So, if you talk about digital media,
Mm.
how did you what is your journey into digital media, real quick? Like, you're doing it as a uni degree right now. Have you done before uni? Did you always do digital media?
No, so it's like an entirely new field. So this is something that I probably picked up in the last 1 year.
What did you
Yeah.
do before that then?
I was in cybersecurity. So
Cybersecurity.
cybersecurity for the past 5 to 6 years. So I have like working experience in cybersecurity, and then I decided to do a switch to digital media. Yeah, it's because of my degree as
So
well.
you did a diploma
Yeah.
in cybersecurity first, then you worked in it.
Mm.
What made you decide to switch, the complete switch to?
Mm,
Is cybersecurity any similar to digital?
it's super different. It's super different.
So how do you
It's
decide
entirely
to?
different.
How do you
from
decide?
structure.
What was the first thought to one go back to school after
Mm,
that, and not only go back to school but go back to a different, completely different
I
course?
I think it's because I was just interested in something more creative. So I decided to just make the switch. Like it was just a big jump, and then I'm glad that I made the jump. Yeah.
Did you have any sort of like prior anything with digital media?
I used to work. So part of cybersecurity, you also work on website vulnerabilities. So when I work on vulnerabilities, I realized that I like to work with websites. So websites is a subset of digital media. So that's where my interest like picked up. Then I decided to go into digital media. Yeah.
So you go into digital media but focus on website design, is it?
Correct. Yeah. No, not really website design, but more towards website development. Yeah. So I can go into design, I can go into development. So I actually have knowledge in both. But right now in my current like in my job, I focus more on development. Yeah.
So what you do have experience? Do you have any experience itself doing both the design part as a job, or as only as a study basis? Do you?
Study base. So I have knowledge with like Figma, basic Figma, and then UX UI framework, like the whole design process, building websites from scratch, like using Bootstrap framework and all that. So the entire design to development process I have picked up in school, but in jobs I more or less just focus on like development. Yeah.
Okay, so okay, can you explain to me what is the difference between website design and website development? Like what exactly is different between them?
Okay, so design is more we work with clients to make sure that the website like meets their requirements and their satisfaction. So more or less like the UX UI elements and the overall design and visual layout. But development is where you actually like build it. Like you have the design and then you actually build it. Yeah. So I think it's complete two different fields, but then they work hand in hand to like deliver the final product, which is like the website to the client.
So wait, so is it usually done by, if it's done by two different teams usually, do they communicate with each other? Is there any level of communication that even has to be done between them? Or do they just do their own, does the development part do it and then the design part comes after? Is this a simultaneous sort of thing?
It's usually a very linear process. So usually, maybe I can just give an overview of like the entire website process. So we start with the meeting with the client, which is where we gather all the requirements from the client. Like for example, what kind of website they want, and then which is when the designer and the developer and the project coordinator, which is me, then we'll all be in the meeting. And then usually the communication between the designer and developer is very important. So the project manager's main role is to just be the bridge across these two. So our overall goal like is to make sure that we deliver what the client wants, which is the website. So usually when we it's usually design first then development. So design is where the designers will actually work on a mock-up which the client is looking for, but the designers will work with the developers to make sure that the functions can be met. Because sometimes the design can be too complicated, but then in development we can't really meet that expectations. Yeah. So it's more like a collaborative effort.
You have an example of that where it's like you said something is too complicated.
Yeah. Okay, so we have worked on multiple NUS sites. So one of the very key, actually this was my first project in iClick. So I think it's called Glow NUS. So it's like it's a subset of the main NUS under NUS Medicine. So their design is very customized, very not following our standard layout. So it's very customized, very creative, full of illustrations. So along the way, client had quite a bit of design feedback and design, recommendations. So usually for design, these kind of elements can be met in the mockup. But then when we go to development, we might face quite a bit of issues. Like for example, it's not very responsive or it's not mobile friendly. So for this particular project, the design and developer worked very closely to make sure that everything was very smooth and like delivered to the client. Yeah.
So in that case, does that mean the UI UX part usually comes down to the dev team to determine, or is it the design team that decides like how the user uh, interface should be?
It's more of designer's role to make sure that the design meets like the UX UI, um, like uh, like the overall methodology. So for example, in the mockup, the designer would usually have the framework in mind when they deliver the mockup. So the developer's role is to just make sure that those UX UI elements are like met in the actual website. Yeah. So I would say the UX UI design is very strong in the actual design phase. Yeah. So, but it will be also good for the developer to have very basic UX UI knowledge, because when you work on development, you need to understand what the user actually wants. For example, sometimes when for example, because I work with developers quite often, so when you have basic UX UI knowledge, you kind of understand what the client wants when you build a website. So they might have some kind of better suggestions, for the client. So for example, if the design doesn't really meet, like it's not very user interactive, then the developer can also suggest a different layout for the client. Yeah, so that's like, I think UX UI design is good for like across like everyone involved in websites to have that. It's like a good what's that called?
Skill?
Yeah, it's a good skill.
So it's like a middle thing that both the designers and the developers themselves need to.
Should, yeah, like have some kind of basic knowledge.
Then you mentioned that you're a project manager, right?
Yeah.
Then wait, you say you're a bridge, right? But what more does it entail? Because all you mentioned is usually the developer and the designer working hand in hand, but where does the project manager come in this?
So when we pick up new website projects, usually it's the project like the manager or coordinator who involves very early on in the project to kind of understand the requirements, and then they are usually the main liaising point with the client. So I liaise with the client to kind of understand what is their requirements, and then I bring that back to the designers and the developers. So it's more or less I liaise with client mostly, and then also internally. So it's usually like we work with different stakeholders in one project. So I work with clients, I work with the design team, I work with the development team, and usually after website is live, I also work with the SEO team. So I basically work with all the teams, yeah, just to deliver like the end goal.
And which team is the easiest to work with?
Easiest to work with, I would say my development team. Yeah, of course, because we have like a day-to-day kind of way that we actually do things in our team. So we've kind of like mastered that communication. So I think when it comes to development, communication is very key, because we handle like, I would say maybe currently we have 20 to 25 active projects right now. So we split the load between the developers, so we are always like ahead and we always communicate whenever we face any issues.
Alright, but is development kind of a team? Let's say that there's a single client. Is this a team job within like the development team? Is this something that multiple people are working on? Or is it just a one person developing the whole
You mean
website?
for like a single project?
Yeah, let's say a single project
Okay. Usually it's always one developer assigned to one project, but there are some projects which are like quite like considered mega projects. So for example, we have to build like 60 to 70 pages. So for those kind of projects, we split the load, so 2 to 3 developers. Yeah.
Is that very hard to coordinate together to get a similar? Okay, I'm still thinking of it as a design thing, where design is someone has a specific design in mind, and so it's not immediately obvious to share it around to people because they can't replicate a
Yeah,
similar
I
field.
got what you mean.
Does the development team have a similar sort of like problem where people may not have the same mind?
Okay, I got what you mean. So, sometimes developers have different style of doing projects. So usually when we split like the work between developers, we make sure that we all have the same goal, and then we follow the design very closely. So we can't really deviate from like what we need to deliver. So maybe they have different styles of doing it, but then ultimately we deliver what the client wants, which is the design. Yeah. So I don't think it's like a actual problem, but I think maybe the problem might come in the sense where sometimes you have to communicate because they are working on the same project. So sometimes there might be some kind of like conflict. Yeah, so because you are working on the same project at the same time, so that's where the project manager or the coordinator's role come in, where they kind of are like the building, like the bridge between them. Then they just make sure that both of them are on the same page. Yeah, when it comes to like working on the project.
Okay, but then now I want to ask, you said you came from cybersecurity, you worked in there first, and then you moved on to study digital
Digital media.
and then you're currently still studying for it.
Yes.
How do you quickly then join a management role rather than being part of the within the team itself?
I think maybe this is something that I also didn't expect at the start, because I was originally planning to join as a developer, and then Cindy and Terrence actually gave me the chance to be a project manager, like a coordinator. So they asked me if I would be like interested in liaising with clients and like handling projects and so on. So I originally thought, okay, why not? Because it's like not something that I've heard of or was interested in, but it was something that seemed interesting. So I thought, okay, give it a go. And now I think I'm working in this role for about more than a year. Yeah, more than a year. So I think so far it's been a very, very interesting experience. I think when you're like a project coordinator, you kind of have to have a lot of skills, or you pick up a lot of skills. I think this is a very on the hand, like on the job kind of like skills. What's that word?
Like training?
Like training.
Yeah, it's something that you pick up like every day. You
Learn something new.
Yeah, you learn something new, or you solve a lot of problems. Yeah.
So even today you're learning new things.
Yeah, every day. So every day so for example, design. Even when I work with Abi on the design software always change. Previously we work with XD, so the developers are used to XD. Then now we switch to Figma. So this is something like, even when it's not related to development work, you learn a lot of things that is not really directly related to your line.
And since you learn something every day, so what's something you learned today?
Today, today so I mean, project coordinators have a lot of meetings lah. So I think every day I learn like some of the skills I learn is how to manage client. Yeah, because sometimes client expectation can be very different when you start a project in along the way. So sometimes how you manage client, how you how you convince them. I think this is like a client communication. I think is a skill that every day you learn because you work with so many different clients. Yeah. So today I had a meeting with a client, and I think how you manage client and how you you know have the overall goal in mind, like you work with the client to meet the overall goal. I think it's a skill that is not something that you can pick up very fast. So it's something that you learn every day. Yeah.
Okay, so just on that, you say you've been in this role for about a year now, which means previously, I think, how long have you been here? You've been here, I think, 4-5 years.
In like working?
In this company here.
Oh, in this company 1 year plus.
Oh,
I
okay.
joined as a
Yeah,
project.
so-
Yeah, I joined as a.
She just said it.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So you joined as a project
Yeah,
manager, but
yeah.
before that, did you ever work as
Developer?
as a developer itself?
I had a few experience, like a few months, not few months, as in like few different companies where I worked as a developer, but it was mostly like front end development. Yeah.
So you have an experience with both the development, being the developing and the one managing the development itself. As a manager, do you do a lot of the development itself? So you don't. I'm guessing you do talk to the SEO, the design and the development team. But okay, you don't really do SEO definitely.
No.
But then the design and development. Do you do any of that at the moment?
So you're asking if I do like the actual
yeah, do you do the
development
actual work itself as a manager? Kind of?
No, so actually I don't do any development work, but then I oversee like the team members who actually do the work. So but I think it's a very good plus to have development knowledge because sometimes the team will face quite a bit of obstacles. So usually they will go to the project coordinator to like get solutions. How do I solve this issue? So sometimes you need to have that kind of technical knowledge that even the developer might not have. But I think it goes further than technical knowledge. I think it's more of problem solving. Because sometimes you don't really need the technical skills to problem solve. You just need to find different ways to ideate to kind of solve that problem. So for example, let's say a website is down. So there was a particular day where we had 10 major website that all the server was down, so the website is not accessible. So we have clients calling in and we have the developers also, so I think the project coordinator's role is mainly problem solve in like the quickest way possible. So you don't really need the technical knowledge, but you just need to liaise with the relevant personnel to make sure everything is like solved and okay.
So then are there any like old crap cases where like they ask you and it's like
You
I
don't
also
know.
don't know. Yeah, there's many times. So usually when this happens, the developer is not sure how to fix. I also don't have that technical knowledge. Then that's where the teamwork actually comes in because we have like a team of 8 to 10 developers. So usually I will arrange a call with our overseas developers and then get them in the meeting and then we'll problem solve together. Yeah, so I think technical knowledge, like the limitation is not really a problem. It's always about, which is where like the learning new skills also comes in. Because when then the developers in office also learn quite a bit of thing, like quite a bit of skills from other developers, with like sharing knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to bring out a certain topic, but before that, I need to cover one part. So before you mentioned Figma, which was what did you say Figma was? Was it
Figma before that
yeah?
XD.
Yeah. What is Figma first?
Yeah.
What are both of them actually?
Both are design softwares used to create mockups and
Okay.
wireframes.
Okay. Then what design software does do developers use? I think they use something called WordPress. Was it?
So design softwares are mainly Figma and XD, but then WordPress is actually like the content management system. So it's used to build websites. So it's like an entirely different like software.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that okay? So wait, that is that used for like that? Is that used for like website development itself?
Yes,
So
yeah.
basically, this is the dev team software. Can I think of it
Yes.
that way?
We work with WordPress mainly for all our websites.
Okay. So real quick, how do you explain how do you explain what these things, something like WordPress does? As a complete outsider, I have no idea what.
So you're asking like just to give you an overview of WordPress.
Yeah, give me a rough
very
overview. Give me explain like I'm 5 years old. Like what
Okay.
what does WordPress do and help?
Bro, you're not even 5.
You can I'm 5 right now.
Okay, WordPress. Okay, so WordPress is a content management system. Then you might ask what is a content management system. So just to like layman terms, it's a software that like end users can use to build websites from scratch. So when you go to WordPress, you can build a lot of things. Websites, you can build e-commerce stores, you can build like a blog articles, anything. So it's basically for a easy way for users to build their own websites. Yeah, so WordPress is what we mainly use to build websites for our clients as well.
Okay, so then my question is, my main topic is that if with all these sort of softwares, like there are many that you could be using. So I'm sure you have experience with either this or some other things. Do you fear that since you don't use them anymore as a manager, do you fear that you're gonna fall behind on how to use them when you're managing the team, where you fear that your knowledge may not be enough when the problems are to arise because you're so not out of touch, but you haven't used it in so long, for example.
Okay, actually when I joined iClick, I had no idea what is WordPress. So this was a very big learning curve because when you're a coordinator, you are supposed to work with the developers to manage WordPress websites basically. So it was a huge like learning curve for me. So actually I would say it's like the opposite of what you said. Every day I actually pick up WordPress. So I taught myself WordPress and right now I think I have sufficient knowledge in it that I don't really think uh, I wouldn't say that I'm like falling behind. I would say that I actually learning day by day. Yeah. So sometimes you don't actually need to do the work. When you work with developers very closely, you kind of pick things up along the way also.
Okay, so WordPress, but what about okay? So UI change the UI changes for that don't really matter. Like I guess sometimes you see, uh, from the media team would, for example, need the Adobe softwares to, and then they may need to refresh themselves on that. But the hard skills itself always stay.
Will remain the same.
The web web design itself has the hard also has the hard skills that that they need to retain, no, that are useful no matter how many years go by. Can you explain some like really basic skills that are there? Is it just a bunch of coding that
for WordPress?
I guess any sort of web development software in general?
You mean like hard skills that wouldn't change over time?
Yeah.
I think when you have coding knowledge, okay, so when you learn specific languages, programming languages, those kind of like stick around because they don't change. I think what actually changes over time is mainly softwares that you're working with. So when it comes to development work right now, WordPress is like the main upcoming, or like I think it's like the main website builder that has been around for quite a while. Eventually maybe WordPress might be phased out and there might be a new like content management system that might be the in thing. But for now I think how I feel website development is you learn the basics and then you adapt along the way. So like eventually maybe WordPress might be phased out, but I think you have like the basic skills to learn new softwares. Yeah, so I think what's important is the actual coding knowledge, the actual UX UI kind of like methodology that you have. So when you have both, then I think you are like kind of like set. I think these are like the main hard skills that you should have.
Then what coding can you do?
Me?
Yeah.
I learned quite a bit of coding languages, but it has been
You learned it during your cyber security time, I'm
and
guessing.
also digital media. Yeah. So like both my like in the cybersecurity and also digital media, I'm doing quite a bit of coding. So I've learned PHP, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap. Like, I think more or less the overall framework that you need to know for coding, I know. But it's more of like the basics, not really quite advanced.
Oh, so what can you do with it?
Okay, so one of my projects in school was to build a personal portfolio from scratch without using like any builders. So
Personal portfolio?
personal portfolio. So I built like a personal portfolio website for myself. Yeah.
Oh, so
from scratch, like without using.
also those websites are like, oh, this is me.
Correct. Yeah. But the thing is, it's purely from code. So right now, WordPress. Okay, maybe one more thing about WordPress is you can actually build websites without code. You don't actually have to code. Like for example, the HTML, CSS, you don't actually have to code. So developers who don't have coding knowledge can also learn WordPress and build websites without coding. But what I was referring to is actually building a website entirely from code, meaning every single element and button is like coded from scratch. Yeah.
That
So
sounds painful.
yeah, it is. So it was a quite big project that I did. Yeah. So even in our team, there are some developers who are more strong in front end. So if you have like an EDM, then you ask them to code it from scratch. They have the capability to do so. Yeah. So usually for designers, they can do EDM by just using Canva or like But then developers, it's like you build it. You can build it from code, like just from scratch.
Okay. So does that mean you actually don't need into the future, for people who are looking to pursue development, website development, they don't really need coding knowledge in just as a whole. Like,
I think I think it's a must to have coding knowledge, but when you work with WordPress, it's not. You can pick up WordPress with no coding knowledge, but eventually along the way you will find that having coding knowledge is a plus, like a huge plus. Yeah, because when you work with page builders, there's not much that you can do. But when you have coding knowledge, you can customize the sections and all that. So I think I think it's a must actually. It's not a plus, but it's a must.
but okay, so WordPress doesn't use coding. As in you don't need coding to use WordPress.
Yeah.
Do other website builders, I don't know what I guess I would call it, content management.
Yeah.
Softwares. Yeah. do those also need coding? Do other ones need coding knowledge?
Coding knowledge. Yeah, I mean, okay, so for our dev interns, they actually don't have much knowledge in coding. So when they join, we first familiarize them like with WordPress, and then along the way, you will find that there's quite a bit of sections that you actually need coding knowledge. So that's where like the full timers actually step in and try to guide them along the way. So coding is like a must when you work with WordPress. So like what I mean by you can pick it up as a beginner, you can build very simple websites without coding knowledge, but when it comes to working with clients and working on like advanced designs, then that's where you need to customize the layout quite a bit, and then the coding comes in.
Does that not make, okay? In what sense does that make WordPress superior or inferior to other ones that require coding from the very beginning?
There are like you can build websites using framework like coding frameworks, like for example Laravel and so on, but I think that's where like the backend developer kind of like comes in, because you have the front end and backend developers, and I think different developers have different style of building websites. So usually you will find that developers who work with WordPress are more towards front end, because you don't work much on like backend functions. Yeah. So what I mean by front end and back end is basically front end. So you can kind of like think of it as front end is like the client side, and then back end is server side. So front end is where you like when you see a website, you see the visual elements, you see the overall layout. So that's the front end. So developers are mainly working on the front end of websites. Back end is where the developer is more focused on the functionalities of the website. For example, how the website actually is stored on the server, or for example how the filtering will work, because these are all functions that are not covered by front end.
Okay, wait, can you, I did not. Well, can you give me a bit more on like back end a bit? So, give me more like concrete examples. If I take a website, such as let's say, don't drop the plan. If I take a website like I guess yeah you can hold that. If I take a website like YouTube maybe, what is a front end and what's a back end
Okay.
part of that? Yeah.
What's the view in YouTube?
I don't know. YouTube's a simple website. Everyone knows YouTube, right?
Okay, YouTube. Okay, so when you see YouTube, you see like the overall interface, right? Like the logo and like the grid style format. So that's like the front end. So front end developers are more towards like they are just focused on the layout. But when you think about the actual content that goes into the website, like the videos, it maybe has about like what billions of videos. So how are all these videos stored? How is the website still running very smoothly? How are like the filters? YouTube has like different filter options. Yeah. So like all these like actual functionalities is where like the backend developer is more focused on. So front end is strictly just layout, and then the backend developer just focuses on making sure the website actually meets the functions. Yeah, for example, the filtering, the videos, like just making sure that all the functions are met. So usually you would find that they kind of work hand in hand as well. But when it comes to WordPress websites, you will find that it's more front end developers, because the back end is already met by WordPress. Like WordPress is a content management system, so it kind of like has all those functions already done and like set up. So the front end developer comes in and just sets up the website, works on the front end, and then we deliver. Yeah. But there might be sometimes where you need to work on advanced functions like filters, or some types of other backend functions like e-commerce. I think e-commerce is also an example of where backend knowledge is a bit more advantageous. Yeah.
Is that a job scope? Like, can I just say I'm only a front end developer? I'm not. I'm like completely not back end, and vice
Yes.
versa.
Yeah, so you can be a front end developer, you can be a back end developer. If you're both, then you call yourself full stack. So full stack, they can do front end and back end.
Then are you a full stack?
No, I think I'm more of a front end. Front end,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay.
So if I just in general say that someone is a website developer, are they usually front end or back end or both?
I mean, if someone tells you you're like they're like a website developer, then usually you can follow up with the question like, are you a front end or back end? Because usually they would just say it as a broad term. Then you can follow up and ask them, because usually you'll find that most developers usually go for front end, because both requires very different skill sets. Like they learn different coding languages. Yeah. So
So one website, one app, for example, can have the
Mm.
very different coding used for.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Mm.
So on a website, on any sort of website, you need not just so you need both a front end and a back end developer usually.
But usually for the projects that we're taking on, usually we just it's either or, because it's also the type of project that we take on. Most of our projects are more front end projects, so we just engage a front end developer. Yeah. But what I mean by back end is, for example, training systems where there's a lot of functions that go behind the system. Then that's why we will employ like a back end developer, because usually backend developers will also have basic front-end knowledge, so they can build the overall system. Yeah, so it also depends on the complexity of the project.
So which one is more per se useful, front or back?
I think both is different requirements. So it's like if the client wants like a simple 10-page website, then we'll just but I think usually we don't really kind of like like segregate them. So when I work with developers, I can also employ developers who are more focused, like more knowledge in backend to do front end work. Yeah, because I think it's like it would be good for them to learn both.
It's good for them to learn both, but
Mm.
why not just have like one half of the team that only specializes on one versus the other? Is it hard to coordinate two? Let's say one person only has one skill, the other only. Is it hard to coordinate them together to work together on one website?
So usually if let's say we have a project that's like very back end heavy, then we will assign it to the back end developer, so there's no like conflict. But when we have like front end projects, then we would have one or two front end like developers working on it. Yeah. So right now, what we're trying to do is we are getting like some of our front end developers to also learn more of like um, coding languages, like making them more of a full stack, because we kind of want our like developers to be like all rounders. So we're actually like getting our full-time developers to engage in courses to learn Laravel framework and so on. So they're actually more like they can be like more well versed in like different languages as well.
So I want to go back a bit about your project management side, where so project management is kind of like the step up after, if you think of like your hierarchy of ranks in a team, normally just the team, I don't know, the basic team member, the developer themselves is one of them, and then right after them, and then a bit higher up would be the manager themselves. But what you do as a manager is very different from what they do as a developer.
I mean, yeah, it's entirely different job scope.
So when you go to, like, if someone goes to school for development, or at least when you went to school for all this, did you envision yourself becoming in a managerial role, or did you always just like, or was this like always something that you knew that would happen?
No, I never I never expected to be in more of like a managing kind of role. Yeah, so it's something that I didn't really expect or learn or anything beforehand. But I would say usually people who manage or coordinate projects, they usually go for courses to pick this up. So like maybe like a 2-3 months course. But honestly, think that project management is something that you have to do hands on to learn. It's not something that you can kind of like, you can pick up a course, but I think when you work in a team and you work with like different clients and different projects, you kind of like learn on the job, because like every client is different, every like team member is different, so you kind of work with them. So I don't think a project coordinator is like, I think the project coordinator works with the team very closely, so they are like one of the team. They just have different job scope, but overall like their goal is still the same.
Do you miss when you were just purely a developer itself, like getting to do a lot of the development work?
I think maybe because when you're like a coordinator, you don't actually do the actual work, so sometimes you might feel that you're like the liaising point. So there are times where I do kind of like want to do the work myself. Yeah, because sometimes I get clients writing in and they have like urgent requests. So for me, like because I already have knowledge, so I can just log in and make the amendments myself. But I think like what I'm trying to say is, I think I do miss being like a developer also lah, yeah. Because you kind of like you deliver the work, whereas like a project coordinator is more of like a liaising point. Yeah.
So you prefer talking lah, in a sense?
You mean my current role or
Yeah.
project? Actually, I didn't think I would be in a liaising kind of role. Yeah, because I when you're in cybersecurity, I think your field is very you work alone. Yeah, so I think project management you have to always be like on standby. You talk to a lot of people. Yeah, so in a day I usually have to manage about 10 different projects a day. So I always, when I come to office, I always prioritize what are like the projects that I'm gonna focus on for the day. And then along the way, we have multiple amendments coming in from client. So I think like time management is one very very important skill that like a project coordinator should have.
Wait, then important question. Are you an introvert or extrovert?
I used to be an introvert, but now I think more extrovert. Yeah, I think when I first joined, I couldn't have meetings, but now I usually have about 5 to 6 meetings a day, internal, external. Yeah, so I've learned quite a lot. I think I've my what's that called, like introvert extrovert, the,
Huh?
like the
The-
skill
The
change.
skill.
Yeah, the skill
thing.
changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
INF.
Oh, the
INF.
16 personality.
Oh yeah, 16.
Mm,
Yeah, 16
mm.
personality. So
That-
that's what it's
Yeah.
called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say you need certain, not skills, but you do learn things when you're working on when you become a in a more managerial role.
Mm.
Can you just quickly list down some of the ones that you've maybe picked up or you think are important as
Like
a manager?
skills?
Yeah, I just like general skills. Anything that comes to mind.
I think time management first, because you usually have quite a number of things that you're thinking of at a certain time. Because usually when you are like a developer, you are assigned to one project and then you work on that project for days. But when you're a coordinator or in my current role, like you have 10 projects, or you might have like 10 amendments coming in, meetings, like just a lot of things. So time management is a very important skill. And I think time management, also another aspect is when you deliver, when you work on projects, of course deadlines are very important. So sometimes I need to make sure that the entire team is very aware of the deadlines. So we have different deadlines for one project. So when you have 10 to 20 different projects, you can imagine that it's very, like
Messy.
Yeah, not really messy, but how do you organize your work? Because if as a project coordinator you don't have your deadlines and everything set in stone and communicated well, then the team is not going to deliver in time. So as a coordinator, you have to have like always be ahead of things. Yeah, just be very like clear on the timelines and so on.
Then if you're not clear, then how?
Then that's when that's when you would see like, okay, the team, like the collaborativeness or like the actual deliverables are not met. So usually the project coordinator is like the driving force behind like the project success.
So you're the slave driver lah.
Yeah, you can say so, I guess. But I always think the development team is a very strong, like how to say, the development team are like the main. I think like I would say without their cohesiveness, like their collaborativeness, I don't think projects can be like like successful. Yeah.
Is it really a collaborative effort if you said so many of them are working on individual things and maybe they're all reporting back to you? At most, are there ever really like 6-7 people working on something together? It really is just like 2 people at most working together, right?
True, but there are like projects where a developer will consult with another developer to like kind of like go through roadblocks. And we also have projects where we had to rope in the entire team to troubleshoot, like to overcome. So for example, we had this one project where the live date was very near, but then we didn't have the technical like we had quite a bit of roadblocks for that project. So our way of overcoming that was to technically employ that whole team. So we all just sat here in this room and then tried to like come up with solutions on how we can actually fix things. Then we came up with all our like tasks that we have to do for the project, and we just split the load. So we actually managed to I think we worked over like quite a bit of like we worked overtime quite a bit of days just to make sure that we actually delivered that project on time. Yeah, so I would say like even though developers are assigned to their individual projects, you would notice that the development team is always sitting together and just discussing how do we do this, how do we do that. So that's like the kind of culture that we want to promote here. Yeah. So it's not you're allocated to your project, so you just work by yourself. We work like in a team. Yeah.
So you not only have like skills of yourself, you also have to foster these sort of values within them. Do you think these sort of skills that you have as a manager are like innate? Like, do you think everyone could become a developer, or are these like trained and honed and practiced and all?
You mean like my
Like,
role, like
yeah,
the project?
like your
Okay.
role as a project manager.
I mean, I kind of like got into it from scratch, so I think this is definitely something that you can hone over time. But I also don't think this job is for everyone in the sense that there are quite a bit of skills where not everyone would align to that. For example, time management and the multitasking, because you have to do so many different things in a day. So usually my to-do list when I come to work, I'll start with maybe 30 different tasks for the day, and it will go to 50. And so I always have to prioritize, like always every single like hour is always prioritized to make sure like I actually like get things done. But sometimes as a project coordinator, a lot of the team will have roadblocks if I don't like facilitate. So yeah, I think prioritizing, multitasking, time management, all these are skills that like I think it's like a must have, and I don't think everyone would want to have that kind of skill. Like what I mean to say is people would rather like just work on one thing. They wouldn't want to like work on so many different things at once. So if you're not that kind of person, then this role is not for you. Yeah, so that's what I think.
So it's not really about just being born. It's not really being a natural born leader.
Yeah, I mean of course I think
there are some, but not as many. Anyone can technically be I guess a leader of sorts to lead.
You can learn over time. Yeah, but I think also think it's good to have some kind of like leadership, like natural leadership kind of
abilities.
Yeah.
Then do you have natural leadership abilities?
I think I have, because I have been in quite a bit of leadership roles before. Yeah, so like camps or like just in general when it comes to projects, even my previous like school projects, I would always find myself like taking the lead because I feel like I would rather tell people to like delegate the work, like you should do this, you should do that, than like I just take the back seat and
So you love being a slave driver lah?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
basically it. Yeah.
I'm scared now.
So I think it's something that I find myself have been doing in the past and in my current role also.
Right. So moving away from so you are leading a team, I guess, but would you say how would you describe your relationship with the clients? You're not leading them per se. You're working
I work
with them. How hard is it to work with clients? Okay, I guess break down once again what is exactly going on when you're liaising with clients. What is the first thing that usually happens when you I guess meet the client?
Like from start to finish?
Yeah, from the very start.
Okay, so when I first have my kickoff meeting with them is when they kind of like we go through the requirements, the contract of the project. So for example, okay, how many pages would the website be? Like what is the design direction? What is it like? For example, is it like like understand more about their company actually. So this is like the very first meeting with the client. So usually I prepare a deck and then I go through with them, understand the requirements, and then after the kickoff meeting is where I will keep in touch with the client very close for the next like 1 to 2 months, which is where we kind of like discuss the theme. For example, what is the overall like theme layout that they're going to go for the website. So I'm always in contact with the client almost every day. So you find that like in different phases it's a bit more hands off, where we have the website and then we send over to the client and then we just wait for the client to give feedback. So sometimes I mean different clients have different like nature. So I have lived maybe about 20 around 20 projects. So I work with more clients than that because I also work with clients on amendments and so on. So different clients have different style of working on projects. So sometimes you have to cater to the client style. You also have to work with team members. So a lot of communication with client. Yeah. So usually it's via like group chat. So I just consistently checking with them like okay, like do you have any feedback on the site, or like how do you feel about this, or so on.
What do you do about a client that doesn't really know what? Is it often that clients don't know what they want in the sense of like they know they want, for example, a new website, but they don't really know what they want in that website. They don't know what functions are needed and so on.
We have clients who know exactly what they want, and they have it all penned down in paper, and then they give us and say, oh, we would like you to come up with design based on this. And then we also have clients who they want us to propose based on what we like. So we propose to them, then we suggest to them what is the best approach, and then we also write content for them, we propose images for them, so we do the entire proposal for them. So I don't really have a preference. I feel like I would rather the proposal be up to us, because I feel like then we actually can deliver, like I would say those are more fun projects, because we actually can like propose something based on our like direction. So this is where we work with the design team very closely, see how we can ideate to deliver like something that the client would like. But sometimes we also have cases where we have initial meetings with client, then along the way clients requirements also change. So there's been a time where we have built a website 100%, then we deliver to the client, and the client said, oh, this is not what we're looking for. So the changes were so drastic that we had to completely redo the website. So we changed everything. We changed the overall design direction, we changed the sitemap, we changed the theme, everything. So it was like from scratch. And sometimes the client might not also have very specific directions. So during this particular time, the client didn't really know what they want. So we deliver, and they say this is not what I'm looking for. Then also have to ideate. Sometimes we have to understand what the client might want. So that's where like the client liaising actually comes in. Kind of like understanding what the client wants and so on, and then we work with the design team, development team. And then the second time around, we proposed an entirely different website, and it was and right now it's like approaching live. Yeah, so it's what the client actually is looking for.
Then you got any case of the client really don't know what they're doing at all?
You mean like they are not familiar with websites?
Like yeah, they completely just go in, they just expect you to just whatever.
Yeah, we do have clients who, I mean, they kind of just leave it to us. They just want us to like kind of like just oversee the entire project. So there's different clients. I think like each one has a different approach, but there's no like, I think all projects are quite interesting in that sense.
It's just some more fun than the others lah.
I would say I usually find it fun when I encounter issues when it comes to projects, because I think that's where like the whole problem solving part. I think when you're project coordinator, problem solving is a huge skill. So I find that when I face issues, like how do we actually overcome, I think it's like something that I actually like about my job. Yeah.
When clients come to you and they don't really have much of okay, maybe they do have a vision, they propose to you something.
Yeah.
Do you then have a vision in mind that you give your team, or do you let your team visualize for themselves what they think is good to have?
I originally was more of like, oh, I think this will be good, I think that will be good. But then along the way, I realized that sometimes I would want the developers to have a more active, like a more of like a proactive role in the project, because I feel developers should be more involved in the project rather than just okay, we receive the design, then we work on it. So along the way, I always when I work with the developers, I always ask them, how do you think we can do this better, or what do you think the client wants. So when they start to ideate, and then like we actually deliver. So I think that's something that I think when you work with teams, then you also like try to get them to get out of their comfort zone, like get them to also come up with solutions.
Would you say designers are creatives? Like, are they not creative. Are they creative people the same way design? Or is it like an art? Would you call
mean
it?
designers?
Yeah, the design. Yeah, the one to, I guess, code the website and all that. Would you call them creative people, or are they just problem solvers? I guess.
You mean designers or like
No, sorry, the
developers?
developers.
Okay. I think developers are usually like I wouldn't say they are creative, but in our team right now, we're actually like trying to promote them to be a bit more creative, because sometimes when we have client feedback, usually we try to solve it, like we try to overcome that on our own. For example, the client might say, oh, I think this section is a bit too like static, like we want to have some kind of creativity or some kind of like animations, and then this is where usually we try to internally come up with solutions, like before we consult the design team. Yeah, so I think it's good for developers to have that kind of creativity as well. And we did have quite a bit of interns who like kind of portrayed that kind of design, like creative thinking quite well.
And then I think one last thing that I may want to ask is, what are some of the best things you could remember? What are some of the most gratifying moments you can remember over your time working? Is it just the satisfaction of pleasing a client, or is it when you manage to solve an issue or so on? What are the satisfying or really like moments that you're most proud of?
I think for me it's more towards like whenever a project is live, because each project, some projects can be 2-3 months of work, some projects can be like 6-7 months of like very constant work over time. So a lot of time goes into individual projects. So when like a project is finally live, and then I think it's like a very like good job done by so many different team members. So it's not, I don't see it as like a personal like kind of like, you know, gratification, what was it, satisfaction. Yeah, I see it as like a overall team effort.
Like, well done team
Yeah,
sort of thing.
because there's so much that goes into like a project.
Is there
Yeah.
one website that you were most proud of, kind of?
Mm,
One client that you were, that their project you were most, that you can call yourself most proud of for whatever reason?
I would say probably the first few projects that I picked up, because I would say those were like my biggest curves, like learning curves. So I had a lot to learn, and at the same time I was like, I there are projects where I independently kind of like just work with the client and then we deliver. So for example, the you know the Glow NUS, the project that I mentioned just now, and then we do have quite a bit of like big projects like Huttons and 93 properties. So we work with a lot of like real estate, we work with a lot of like e-commerce stores. So right now we have quite a bit of interesting projects. We work with like a pharmaceutical company, like an e-commerce store. We work with what are some of our like more actually we are working with quite a lot of NUS sites right now. So I think usually like the main project that I'm actually quite proud of, I would say, is my early projects. Yeah, particularly I think the Glow NUS.
Does that mean kind of like you enjoy the, I'm guessing, the learning, the problem solving part that comes with it. As you grow as a manager, you started out, I guess, as the designer itself,
Yeah.
and now you've sort of moved on to the managing part. Does that mean eventually you kind of hope to go beyond this part where maybe you see managing as not as tough or like enjoyable as a role anymore, because there's no more of that problem or that learning that you feel needs to be done?
I don't think the problem solving will stop. I actually feel every day I encounter so many different problems. So I don't think this is something that would like kind of I think it's going to be always there. But project management, I think, also like requires quite a bit of like how to say, I think it's something that right now, because you know with the Figma, like we are learning quite a lot of different things. So for example, sometimes we also have like projects where I'm not very familiar, like very back end heavy projects. So even that's a very steep learning curve for me. So I don't think this is something that would like the learning would stop. I don't think it will stop. Yeah, I think it will continue to grow like every day.
Can you see yourself going back down to in, I guess, in the next however many years, maybe not more than 10, but can you see yourself going back down to the developer part and being part of that? Or is this something that you're much happier, or not, now that you've done experience both for a bit, are you much happier being one over the other?
I think this is something that I might in the future like dabble in development work more. Actually, I was thinking of it doesn't really have to be development, because when you're coordinator, you also pick up quite a bit of design. So actually, in the future, like maybe over the next 10 years, I might be open to quite a bit of like different opportunities. So I think project management is a huge plus for me that actually taught me quite a bit of skills. So eventually I can like go into UX UI, I can go into development, I can also continue in the project management role. Yeah, so I think I have quite a bit of like options here.
Okay, then
So with that, I think that's about all that we may want to ask for this time. Would you like to shout anything out to the audience out there?
Like social media.
anything
Anything that you
whatever.
wanna say?
I don't-
No.
No,
Yeah,
nah,
I don't-
okay.
No, nothing. But
No,
otherwise,
no LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Okay.
oh no
No.
LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, anyways, so that would conclude another episode of the Just Click podcast. You can check this the description down below for any of iClick's social medias. But otherwise, thank you, Nitya, for coming down and speaking with us. But we'll catch you guys next time. Bye bye.